Hello and welcome to Hello Yellow. This is a program where we get to speak to some really inspirational people, and today our guest is Shannah Kennedy, who is the author, presenter, speaker and executive coach of her own business, and I'm delighted to have her here to share her story with us all today. Please join me in welcoming Shannah to the program. Welcome, Shannah.
Thanks so much for having me, Viv. It's great to be here.
Look, it's such a pleasure to meet you, and I know you've written 8 books, but I really want to go back to how it all started with you. Where did your career begin?
It sort of began in stockbroking, believe it or not. I watched Wall Street, the movie, and I thought, yep, I'm going to be a stockbroker. So I got a job in Melbourne in a stockbroking firm and worked my way up to be one of the first girls to ever sit on the desk.
Wow.
And I realised at that point it was like the Wolf of Wall Street, and it was no place for a female to be. And
so lots of quaaludes and things? No.
A lot of that stuff, but this is like back in the late 80s, you know, so I'm in my mid-50s. So it's a long time ago and the world has changed. So I left and travelled the world for a bit and learnt a lot of things and came back and went into sport, and I thought that was never on my radar, and went into corporate sport as a Jerry Maguire sponsorship person. So
wow.
I was flying to events. I had married my job completely. A lot of people do that, a lot of women do that, they marry their job. Worked 7 days a week buying and selling athletes, and basically burnt myself to a crisp and got chronic fatigue by the time I was 30.
Wow. And where were you working as a sports manager?
At Bolle Sunglasses. So I looked after the brand,
in
the
Australia,
marketing.
Or?
Yeah, in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it was all the different sports, all the different athletes and their sponsorship contracts.
Wow.
Fantastic job in your 20s, but not sustainable for the long term, especially if you wanted to have a family. So I got really sick, really sick. And I see it as a gift actually, because I have to now live very intentionally, and this is, you know, over 20 years later. So I studied to be a life coach when I was sick, because I thought, no one looks after our athletes when they're retired, and they were retiring at 30. So what happens to you when you lose your job or you get sick and you don't have a life plan? So I then wrote a book called The Life Plan, had my practice going, and 20 years later I've now written 8 books and I'm on the speaking circuit, and I talk about you are not your job. You know, your job is what you do, and we need to love what we do, but at the end of the day we need to know our values, our vision for ourselves, and how we want to feel when we show up in the world.
That is just so powerful, and I want to unpack that in a little bit. I want you to tell our listeners what your life was like before you got chronic fatigue. Like, talk to me about you know, what you were doing from start to end, so that anyone who's listening can understand and say, well, actually I'm not doing that, or actually that sounds exactly like me.
Well, I was the A-type overachieving perfectionist achievement junkie. So I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who are that type of personality. It is, you just don't sit down. You know, and if you've got a headache, you push through. You just keep going to more and more events because, you know, that's the end of the triathlon season, or there's a ski event, or I just kept going. There was no off switch, and I really didn't value rest. I thought that was just soft.
For lazy people.
Really soft for lazy people. And what I did learn, and what I didn't observe at the time, is high performance athletes value recovery as much as performance. And I just didn't look at that part. I just looked at the high performance part. So I was all about achievement. And I really had to then think about when I was sick and in bed for a year.
Wow.
A whole year in bed. Horrific. Cannot drive. All of your senses are burnt. You know, you can't read because your eyes hurt. You can't have any smells because it burns your nose. I couldn't go for a walk. I couldn't drive my car. It's like you've got the worst hangover you've ever had in your life, but you haven't been out.
So did it happen overnight, or was it something that was gradual? You just missed all the warning signs?
Oh, it was gradual, and I just decided to push all the warning signs to the side.
And what were some of those warning signs?
It's like I've got the headache, or my body's aching a bit. Doesn't matter, keep going, take a couple of Panadol, move on. I really didn't respect my own self-awareness at all. It was all about achievement and doing more and ticking the list and wearing the badge of honour. And it was a big cost, a really big cost.
So you're, how old, 30 at this age? How
Yep,
old?
30.
Yep, 30. And so you obviously go and see a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor says you have chronic fatigue or...
No, didn't know then. They said, oh, we think you've got MS, we think you've got lupus. I was in the Alfred. They once they eliminate everything, they then say, I think you've got chronic fatigue. And there's been so much research since then, so it's actually easily diagnosed now. But I basically burnt out my entire adrenal system by not stopping.
And it's funny because what you said about athletes really prioritising recovery, it is so true, because anyone who has a sense of awareness or who is a creative will tell you that the magic actually happens in the stillness.
Correct.
And in the quiet times. And I think, you know, potentially for our listeners who aren't in that same category of, you know, the A-type personality, but still push away the rest, that really once you get off the treadmill, you've got enough information in your head to allow it to marinate, and then for it to have the solution come to the fore if you allow that stillness and that space.
Absolutely. And you go into, you know, when you come from high to low so quickly, you go into a very deep depression, because you don't know who you are without your job. Like, you are your job.
And unfortunately, and very unfortunately, men are the victims of this more and more. And I mean, look, this is a whole other conversation about where men sit, because women, fortunately and unfortunately, are, you know, the mother or the career person or the sister. There's a lot more emotional awareness about a lack of attachment to definition of self. And and I think that's a huge message for today, and for, you know, for many,
it's for every human.
years.
It's for every human. You know, my career turned very corporate very quickly, because corporates are business athletes. So we could have the same analogy as an athlete, but turn it into business. And who is Peter without Macquarie Bank? You know, they don't think their skills are transferable, because they're just not really, they haven't developed their life outside of work. And that's what I really coach a lot of people on, is let's build a great career, but alongside that, let's build a great life. Let's have a life plan going, and you need plan B. What if you get sick? What if you get injured? What if you get redundant? What if the business fails? We have to have a little bit more to us than just career.
So you're lying in bed and you're thinking, God only knows. Like,
It was not pretty. It was not pretty. It was, who is Shannah without ballet? Because when you're a sponsorship manager, you have a lot of money to give away. You have a lot of free gear to give away. So I had a lot of friends, right? But when I was sick, those friends, they weren't there. It was just me and the mirror. And I actually got myself a coach, because I was so down and depressed, and everyone else has a coach, you know, in sport. So I thought, I'll just pretend I'm something like that. So that's when I got my first coach, and the job was to fall in love with myself and look in the mirror and start building a relationship with myself, instead of valuing just my role. And that was really confronting. It's really hard. And I do invite everybody to think about the relationship with yourself is the most important one you have in the world, because you're with yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every waking breath of your life. So that inner critic and that self-belief and that self-awareness and that confidence is really home base for everybody. And when we get that right, everything else is much easier.
So you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you have to start building this self-worth relationship.
Not pretty.
What were some of the challenges that you endured in the beginning?
Yeah, I think what happened in the beginning is my job was to look in the mirror and build that relationship, and that was the job from my coach, and that's what a lot of elite athletes have to do to, you know, prime themselves to perform.
Yeah.
And I'd never done that, so it was really confronting actually to look in the mirror, not at my hair or my skin, but into my soul and say, you know, there's a nice person in there, and you know, just because the phone's not ringing now because you don't have free things to give away, we need to start building from scratch and being grateful for what we do have, and loving that, you know, you don't like your nose or whatever it is, but just start appreciating self and giving yourself these mini challenges and actually maybe high-fiving yourself for just showing up and trying.
So I have a daughter at the moment, she's 13, and I say to her, sweetheart, I can take you to this point and tell you what I see, but if you're not open enough to take in that yourself, so it is really very much a self-worth thing, where do you start with that? I mean, for me, it's on a similar journey. It's about finding 5 things I'm grateful for. So it's as simple as that. I mean, where would you start?
I think it's actually a lot of brain training, which no one gets taught and nobody talks about at school especially, is being able to say in the mirror, I love myself and I love my life. And the more that you say that, the more you start to feel it. So it's that neural pathway that we really want to develop of self-approval and I love who I am, I love my life, I'm grateful for this, I'm going to challenge myself around this. I think that self-talk actually has to be practiced.
I'm a big believer in that we haven't taught ourselves, our children, the next generation on how to be our own best friend.
Yeah.
So what you're saying to me just so rings true. Is really just building that positive muscle. So obviously you've written 8 books, which is huge. But what do you think people can do today? And is it that high five moment every day? I mean, it's the self-talk. Are there practical tools? And you alluded to me before that you still do that though. It's not like oh, I've ticked that box. I'm perfect now.
Oh, it's forever. It's forever. So I invite people to say, what is a practice that you could start doing today that you'd still love to be doing when you're 80? That becomes like brushing your teeth. So there's a couple for me. One is the mirror work every time I brush my teeth. So that's twice a day.
So when you're brushing your teeth, you're saying?
I'm saying, oh, you showed up today, or that went well today, or geez, that Zoom didn't go so well today, or whatever it is, but you showed up, it's okay, high five, tomorrow's a new day. Having that conversation with self that's positive and a cheerleader. The other thing that I think is really important that nobody does is breathe. So people are running around switched onto their phones 24/7. So I think a power habit, which I teach a lot of people, which is a high performance sport habit, is learning how to regulate yourself through breath. So if you're anxious, if you're overwhelmed, if you're nervous, if you're just a bit down, is about recalibrating yourself through 3 breaths. So every time you wash your hands in the bathroom, which we just learnt through COVID, how to wash our hands with all of those ads, we could habit stack and build on 3 deep grounding breaths. And what that does is change your nervous system. It makes you feel like, oh, I'm in control. It allows the brain to catch up and have a little break because it's just so overstimulated the whole time. So I do 3 breaths every time I wash my hands.
And are they deep or are they just...
Deep.
Yeah.
Just deep, grounding, calm, confident breaths is the power habit for the rest of your life, because all ages, stages and seasons we go through, we're going to have different problems and different issues with our bodies, with our environment, with whatever work that we're doing and stage of career we're at, where the kids are at. Everything keeps changing. But the one constant thing you could do is ground yourself through 3 deep breaths. So every time I wash my hands, I just do 3 deep, calm, grounding breaths. And it's actually changed. It's changed my whole health. It's changed my way that I cope with life, because things are difficult. I've got 2 teenagers. I've got an 18 and a 19-year-old, and let me tell you, there's really difficult, challenging situations, letting go of your kids and, speaking on stages all the time and writing books and doing book tours and doing interviews and trying to look up after the grandparents. There's a lot going on. So the breath is actually it's the steady. It's the calmness, it's the grounded, so that we can actually maybe enjoy today, even though we've got lots of challenges around us. And we can enjoy sitting here because we're breathing.
Yes.
Whereas most people will get home from work and have not taken a breath. They've actually been holding their breath all day. Stress, cortisol, everything builds in the body.
So what are you seeing now? Obviously you're incredibly successful, even though, you reflect on and say you were the typical, you're still an overachiever. Which is, I think, something to be incredibly proud of if you're experiencing joy in that process.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you're seeing these days coaching people, and let's talk about men. What are you seeing with them, that some of their challenges that they're enduring, and then how are you helping them overcome those things?
I think with men, they're a little bit lost once they hit 50 in particular, because we have a society ladder to 50. You know, you'll go to uni, or you'll get your job, or you'll master your craft, and then you hit 50, and then women have menopause, and then men have menopause. And I think no one really has a plan post 50. And we're aging now, so we're actually staying alive a lot longer, say towards 90. So we're not retiring at 60. You can't have 30 years of retirement. It's boring. Yeah. So we really need to think of, I need a lifestyle plan where I'm part-time working, but I'm building my life before I retire, and a lot of it comes back to health. So with men, I'm doing a lot of coaching on their life plan, on what are the ages and stages, what's going to be most important, and what can I be doing to actually be in the driver's seat for that. So I think that's really important. I think men are, they get very overwhelmed a lot of the time. There's a lot of responsibility. They've never really been connected to magazines that we grew up with. That wasn't in their world. But now with social media, I think they're starting to experience probably what women have experienced the whole way along.
In terms of?
Comparisonitis. Yeah.
Comparisonitis.
Yeah.
In terms of physicality, or in terms of financial, or in
I
terms
think
of
everything, what other people are achieving, how people are looking, the perception of other people's lives, which is often not reality. Comparisonitis is the thief of all joy. So I think I'm working on focus on your own lane. Where your focus goes, your energy will flow. So let's get your energy where you want it to be by focusing on some different things for a while, to find some joy again, because that's when they come alive.
And what sorts of things in general are the men finding joy in, and that they're wanting to pivot towards? Because a lot of men in my circles, you know, they have a laugh over sport, a bit of gambling, over a beer. Occasionally, you know, when forced, there is some chat around children challenges and etc. But what are you finding in the cold, hard, honest, truth and genuine conversation you're having, in that trust with some of your men, that they'd really like to be better at?
I think a lot of them lack confidence. Deep down, you know, we can hide with our sport talk and talk about our online bets and things, but there's a little bit of confidence missing. And when they actually start focusing on themselves again and their plan, their confidence goes up. And when their confidence goes up, you know, they're just much happier in general and find a bit more joy.
So what can we do as friends of these men that we can see in that sort of tipping into that post 50-50 mark? What can we do to support and help nourish and nurture that, other than get them to come and see you?
Yeah, come and see me. But it's about learning some new things and some new skills as well. So I have coached a lot of men in their 70s who are going into retirement, and their biggest regret is, I actually didn't learn anything new for a long time. So now I have to learn things from scratch at 70. It's really hard. I wish I'd started a bit earlier, just drip feeding some of those new skills that we want to learn, new hobbies that we want to take up. I think men just need to keep expanding and evolving and not getting stuck in their sport rut, or it's making them happy to watch sport. I love sport. I watch a lot of sport. But just a few mini challenges. And when they've got some mini challenges, it really adds to their confidence.
Brilliant. And so let's talk women. Why not? Obviously, we talked off camera about how great it is that we can have honest conversations very, very quickly. But what are you finding with women when you're coaching them that they are wanting to change in their lives? And how are you going? How do you give them the toolkit to do that?
Yeah, I think for men it's a lot of confidence. For women it's exhaustion. So most women come to me saying, I am absolutely exhausted and I need to simplify my life. And I need to stop doing some things which are just causing great overwhelm. So women are generally people pleasers. So we say a lot of yes, we'll do a lot of things for other people. And I think we need to start protecting the asset a little bit more. And I give them permission to do that. and all of a sudden their energy comes back, and then they can think clearly and maybe put some boundaries around some things and stop taking the phone to bed, and just starting at that little bit more, I need to start caring for self, and their happiness goes up too.
I'm a classic boundary challenged human.
Because you're female.
Yes. I mean, so what little tips could you give to someone like me to build better boundaries and have the permission to not feel so, by doing so, that you feel a bit selfish?
Yeah, well, it's not selfish, it's self-care. And guilt is a wasted emotion, they say. So us feeling guilty that we're not going to the dinner party tonight, when really we should be on the couch just really doing our good recovery, our athletic recovery.
What's an athletic recovery look like?
It's high performance recovery. It is really doing, and we're all different. So for me, I need a certain amount of couch nights a week. Like, I don't want to see people. I don't want to go out for dinner. Please don't invite people over. I need quiet. I need to stretch. I need to lie with my legs up the wall. I need to refuel, like consciously refuel and do a meditation or whatever. But a lot of people don't have specific little routines. So, you know, brushing your teeth and doing mirror work, that's a routine. In the morning, it's the 3 M's. Make your bed, move your body, mindfully breathe. So every day I get up at 6, I make my bed, I walk for an hour, do some breathing, and then I'll turn the phone on. Now, protect the asset first. Then you've got your breathing all day, and that's your marathon stops. They're your Gatorade stations to reset. And then at the end, you know, what are your nighttime cool down routines? You know, we see the footy players do it, we see the tennis players do it. We have such an insight into sport now. We need to bring that into our own life. So your nighttime routine is just as important as the morning one.
And what's your nighttime routine?
Me, I have dinner early, always early. I go in our pool, which we don't heat, so it's like my cold therapy, and have a shower, and then I don't sit on the couch until I've stretched.
Okay.
So I'll watch TV stretching first, because we're sitting all day.
Yep.
Chronic fatigue means you get very bad restless legs every night. I still do. I still need to manage it. So the stretching, going on the roller, putting my legs up the wall, that will make sure I have a much better sleep.
And what would you, if you had a magic wand moving forward, what would you urge people to do every day, whether it's a 5-year-old child to your 100-year-old adult, that you wish that you could make everyone understand?
Breathing.
Just breathing.
You know, I taught my kids to breathe, and you know, it gives me such joy when they come home from an exam and say, I breathed through it. I didn't panic, and I can cope with curveballs coming at me because I can take a breath first. And I just think it's a really important, powerful, high performance habit that we're not taught ever, and we see it in high performance sport. And when we bring it into our life, it's changed my life, it's changed my health. And it sounds really boring, and it's easy, and it's free. That's why people don't like it. They want to pay for an expensive pill.
Yeah.
But the breath, you are constantly coming home to self.
And you were talking about life plan before, so it's quite nice, you know, as an individual to sit there and say, well, these are my goals. And I did actually listen to a podcast some years ago, and there was conversation around, okay, so businesses build business plans, but as a couple or as a family, we rarely dedicate ourselves to actually building out a life plan. Is that something that you...
Yeah, that freaks me out because we work for the business of self, right?
Yes.
Your job supports the business of your family. So we have our 40-year plan, and it started when the kids were born, so I'm already 20 years into my plan.
So you had a 40-year plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
With your husband?
With my husband, with the kids on it, the whole thing. It's like you're bringing out the map of Australia, and everyone's just driving around Melbourne. And I'm saying to people when I coach them, where are you going? So we can plot Sydney and Brisbane and Darwin and Perth, and let's finish in the Maldives. So I just took your brain on a beautiful journey, right? Finished in the Maldives, jumping into the water.
That's inspirational.
Yeah, beautiful. Great. So when you're driving around Melbourne now, you know oh, I need to look out for the sign for Sydney. I need to just prepare my car for the long Sydney trip and I want to make these little stops. The human brain actually needs a map. It needs to know where it's going and what it's doing and why it's doing it. So when you've got a life plan, you know why you're going to gym today, or why you're not going to a sale and spending more money on towels that you don't need anymore. You have purpose every day because you've mapped something out. The map might change. There might be some detours, there might be some roadworks. That's okay. But we need a big picture. We must have a big picture about how we want to feel in the future.
And so do you do that regularly with your husband? Or?
Yes.
How often?
Every client. Well, it's looked at. I have it printed on my desk, so I'm scribbling on it all the time. Great ideas for the future.
Yes.
So, let's stop at that town and that town. So there's bucket lists on there and courses that you want to study. And the confidence it gives my clients is off the chart, because they actually feel like, I've got a plan, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, and they're inspired and builds a vigour towards why they get up every morning and why they do the breath work and why they actually earn a dollar.
And you also see how you're going to change. It's like, we're not going to have 13-year-olds forever. In 5 years, you've got an 18-year-old driving a car and she's going to be independent and off she goes. Your life is going to be completely different. So you need to be able to prepare a little bit for that too, and to think about, well, she's not going to need me as much in the future, but she really does now, and it's a very short period of time on a 20-year plan.
Shannah, you have been such a joy for me to sit and just find an alignment with, theory, but also then practical tools that you've shared so generously with our audience. You've written a number of books. Which one would you recommend the most? So the first one,
That's
Elevate.
The latest. That's the latest. That's co-written with the ex-CEO of Sports Girl, who I coached for 10 years while she was in that seat. It's a great book for everybody can elevate. Everyone can do one thing better, and we can all take a small step every day to elevate. And the bestseller is The Life Plan, which is just about you creating your life plan.
It's been such a joy to chat with you today, and thank you for being so generous with your time with me, Shannah. So,
it's great. I love it. It's great to share, isn't it?
Oh, look, just sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring.
And beyond that.
And isn't it great that we can keep learning from each other? Yeah. That's why I love these shows, because we're learning so much, whereas 20 years ago, there weren't podcasts and shows and things, and we now have access to great information, and we have access to learning from people who are experts in certain fields to bring into our life. I think it's fantastic.
Well, you're certainly a life expert, and I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in executive coaching or having you come and do some inspirational speaking for their corporation or business, please reach out. Shannah's details will be appearing on the screen now. Otherwise, if you're listening, it's shannahkennedy.com. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you for listening.